There's a man driving down in a very quiet part of the country, a lot of farms around, and suddenly running out in front of him is a chicken. And he slams on the brakes, and as he does so, he realizes this chicken is fast, speeds off ahead of him, going around 30 miles an hour. So the man drives on after the chicken and sees the chicken turning into a farmhouse. And as he does so, he realizes that the chicken has 3 legs. 3 legs. And he turns into the farmhouse and realizes there's a load of chickens all with 3 legs. And he shouts out to the farmer, "This is amazing, you've got chickens with 3 legs." And the farmer says, "Yes, I know, we breed them that way. My wife and I love chicken drumsticks." The driver says, "Wow, what do they taste like?" The farmer says, "I don't know. We've not been able to catch one yet." It's just so fast, you see. They're so fast. When it comes to comic book or movie superheroes, who's your favorite? Who do you like? Mine are any superhero that has a bit of speed. I don't know what it is, but if it's Captain Marvel or Quicksilver or the Flash, I like the fact they've got speed. They're so fast. Can't keep up with them. We continue this series from the early chapters of Revelation today with Jesus as the hero of the church. Not a superhero belonging to a comic book world, but a hero that belongs to our streets, our neighborhoods, our homes. His world is our world. In Great Britain, a new king or queen is heralded with a coronation banquet in the Fellowship Hall. Westminster Hall. Westminster. And among all the pageantry is the king's champion, who rides clad in full armor alongside the king or queen. And on entering the hall, the king's champion, will throw down their gauntlet 3 times and challenge to mortal combat any who would dispute the king's right to reign. This tradition began in the 14th century in Britain, and it continues today, although not since 1902, as the king's champion challenged anyone to mortal combat. But nevertheless, they ride in as the champion of the king or the queen, carrying the herald alongside the ruler. A champion is one who fights on behalf of another. Jesus is the hero. Better still, he is the champion. He is the champion of the church. He is the one who challenges any who would dispute his heavenly Father's right to reign on earth, as he does in heaven. He is the one who, as the champion, stands in defiance against anyone who may threaten his church. That's you, that's me, his church. Ephesians 5:27 describes the church as the bride. Like a husband who loves his wife, Christ loves the church, and as the champion, gave himself for it. And I want to identify, if you take the bulletin, 3 ways today that Jesus is the champion of the church. There's 3 listed there. Jesus, the champion of the church. Not too long ago, Burger King published a full-page ad in the USA Today introducing an exciting new menu item called the left-handed Whopper. It was designed especially for the 32 million left-handed Americans. The new Whopper, they said, would include the same ingredients as the original Whopper: lettuce, tomato, hamburger patty. However, the left-handed Whopper had all the condiments rotated 180 degrees, thereby redistributing the weight of the sandwich, so the bulk of the condiments would skew to the left, reducing the amount of lettuce and other toppings from spilling out on the right side of the burger. The new sandwich, they said, is the ultimate have-it-your-way for our left-handed customers. They went on to say the company had plans to roll out the left-handed Whopper to other countries where there was a large left-handed population. Of course, the following day, Burger King issued a press release in the same newspaper revealing the left-handed Whopper was a hoax. It was April the 1st. It was a Whopper. Nevertheless, thousands, this is true, of left-handed customers went into a Burger King that day and requested their new left-handed sandwich. At the same time, many others requested their own right-handed version. Is there anything more galling? Is there anything more frustrating? Anything perhaps more humiliating? when we're hoodwinked, when we're fooled, when we're taken in. Everything seemed a little bit off, but nevertheless we handed our money over. We signed something. We were taken along, carried along. We get an email from an African prince who would love to send us his riches if we just send him our bank account details. We get a newspaper article or read something online, and it's a great article, and we share it with our friends, and then we're told it's fake news. The devil tells us that we've used up all of God's grace. We're no longer forgiven. It's fake news. And in those moments, to quote one from the early days of rock and roll, Roger Daltrey, we get on our knees and pray, I won't get fooled again. Some heroes boast great strength, others can boast about speed or teleportation, but can anything truly match great wisdom? Number one, Jesus is the champion of all wisdom. We need discernment. We need wisdom. We need to be able to see through what is being presented to what is really being offered. Colossians 2:3 says, in Jesus, some, most, no. In Jesus, all treasures of wisdom and knowledge are found. All that we need. In Jesus, every believer has access to all wisdom, all knowledge, sufficient for holy living. Let's not take things on face value. Let's pray over a situation. Let's talk to somebody when it doesn't seem quite right. But as Jesus instructed, we are to be wise as serpents, but also as innocent as doves. Let's not become so cynical that we don't trust anything. Matthew 10:16. So Jesus, number one, is the champion of wisdom, of all wisdom, that we so desperately need today, where there are so many truths competing. One dad was telling another father how his 7-year-old daughter was asked by the teacher for the class to write a story called My Biggest Surprise. Not until the end of the school year, said the father, did we see what Abigail wrote. It read this: I got up this morning and I ran into Mummy and Daddy's bed and hopped in. But it wasn't Mummy at all. It was, to my surprise, Mrs. Wilkins from next door. What our daughter, the father said, neglected to tell the teacher was that we had called Mrs. Wilkins late at night the previous evening to stay with our 2 children while I took my wife to the hospital for our 3rd child to be born. There are moments that can feel a little chaotic. A new baby born, a house move, a change in our health, a new job, a new assignment, and things are a little beyond our control, things are a little bit chaotic. Well, number 2, Jesus is the champion in complete control. All things are subject to him. He is the one who controls all things. He is the champion in complete control. Immediately after World War II ended, the Allied armies began to gather up the many hungry, homeless children. They placed them in refugee camps for a time. There they were well fed, well looked after. And despite the excellent care, however, they still slept poorly, they were nervous, they were afraid. A psychologist came up with a solution. Each child was given a piece of bread to hold after he or she was put to bed. The bread was not for them to eat, but to hold. The piece of bread that they were able to hold on to produced wonderful results. It gave the children a sense of control, a sense of calm and contentment. It assured them that they would have food for the next day. Jesus is the champion in complete control. In ancient days, in the Old Testament times, the sea was regarded as anything but controllable and calm. I don't know if you like to go out in the water, like take a boat. We have wonderful oceans around us in this part of the world. But for the Old Testament times, the sea was a dangerous place. It was uncontrollable. People went out to sea and did not return. There was a fear of the sea. You think of the many miracles of Jesus and the storms and the troubles on the Sea of Galilee. How does the Apostle John describe the sea, therefore, in Revelation 4:6? He says, before the throne of the champion, there was a sea of glass. as clear as crystal, a sea that is tamed by the champion, a sea that is calm and tranquil. We don't need to go to the moon to find a sea of tranquility. Jesus brings it into our lives today. He is the champion in complete control. And he says to you, where is life agitated? Where is life in turmoil? Where is life not in control right now? Is it those moments when we're pacing up and down in a waiting room? Is it those moments when we're holding on to the phone and we've listened to that same piece of classical music for 20 minutes because we've been told they're going to come back to us in a minute? We're anxious. We're dealing with things that seem beyond our control. Hear again the voice of God through Psalm 46:10. Be still. Be still. Be still and know that I am God. So Jesus is the champion in control. Dr. Lenore Campbell was a successful and popular surgeon throughout the 50s, and he wrote many books. And in one he wrote this: in my medical career, early on, I went to see a patient who was coming out of anesthesia. Far off, the church bells gently chimed, and as she began to open her eyes, she said, listening to the music, I must be in heaven. Then she saw me and said, no, I can't be. There's Dr. Campbell. We belong to a kingdom that is in this world. Jesus came and said the kingdom is near, but it's not of this world. It competes with this world. We have the gentle bells of heaven chiming, but they compete with the cacophony and discord and noise of this world. My kingdom is not of this world, said Jesus. And maybe for you right now, we're a little bit like the church in Revelation 3, the Laodicean church, a church that is lukewarm. We have times of lukewarm faith. It's not cold, it's not fighting faith, it's not trying to hold on to faith, it's not on fire and hot for the Lord. It's just there, it's tepid, it's a bit stagnant, it's lukewarm. And maybe if we're honest, you would say that you've allowed the world that we live in to live in you, to cause you to compromise your commitment to the champion. Maybe you simply feel overwhelmed by things around you. The Apostle John's response in chapter 4 of Revelation is that which every generation has taken hold of believers since he wrote this and before. And that is worship. Worship of Jesus, number 3, the champion of the world. The champion of the world. In those moments when we feel, where is his kingdom the best and most important thing we can do? Yes, we can read the Bible, we can talk about him, we can come to church, we can tell others about him, all good things, but the most important calling is worship. Is worship of the King of Kings, worship of the one who is on the throne. In 2017, the Queen of England visited Belfast Island to go to the set of Game of Thrones. And she was shown the Iron Throne from that TV show. She declined the offer to sit on it. Good for her. Throne is a key word in the book of Revelation. It's a Greek word meaning chair or elevated seat. In Revelation 4, verse 4 that we just read, 25 thrones appear at one time. One is the elevated throne of Jesus, the champion of the world. The other are 24 thrones that it's believed to represent the 12 tribes of the Old Testament and the 12 New Testament apostles. At the same time, we're told by John there are 4 living creatures that come before that throne: a lion, a calf or ox, a man, and an eagle. Words taken from the prophet Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 10. Like much of Revelation, the symbolism of these 4 living creatures is open to different interpretations. Most scholars agree they represent the 4 primary roles, the 4 key characteristics of Jesus. The lion is the king. Jesus is the King of Kings. The calf or ox is the sacrificial side of Jesus, the servanthood of Jesus. The man is the humanity of Jesus, the incarnation of Jesus coming into our world. And the eagle is the deity of Jesus. Jesus as God is God. These 4 roles also represent the 4 different themes of the 4 Gospels of the New Testament. Overall, the word throne, if you want to count, occurs 14 different times in this short chapter and 46 times in the entire book of Revelation. It's telling us about who is on our throne. Who do we place, or what do we place on our throne? What is it that we value and worship? And the prayer of John and the message of this scripture today is that it be Jesus. It's the bedrock of Christian theology, that the one who is worthy of our worship is on that throne. Christian writer Tim Keller said, worship is seeing what God is worth and giving him what he's worth. So what is God worth to you? And out of that worth you will worship. I saw this sign outside an antique store. Grandma had it, Mum threw it out, and I brought it back. I'm sure many of you enjoy going to antiques stores, and perhaps you've watched Antiques Roadshow. On one particular episode, an elderly gentleman named Ted Kuntz, brought an old blanket that he'd inherited several years ago. As a boy, Ted's grandma had it, and she placed the blanket on his bed on cold nights. In later years, when he was much older, it was simply thrown over the back of a rocking chair in his bedroom. That's where it stayed until Antiques Roadshow came to his home city of Tucson, Arizona. And Ted met an appraiser for the blanket's worth. Expert appraiser Don Ellis later confessed for the first time on the show his heart stopped when he saw the blanket. It was a Navajo chief's blanket woven in the 1840s. It was in perfect condition. It was one of the oldest intact Navajo weaves to survive into the 21st century, and one of only a tiny handful to exist outside of museum collections. Because of its rarity, quality, and significance, the appraiser had no trouble in valuing it at around $500,000. One was recently sold for just over $1 million. It's interesting how Ted walked out of the Antiques Roadshow Convention Center different from how he arrived. He arrived with this blanket cavalierly slung over his arm. He left with it cradled in his arms, taking with him 2 security guards as he drove straight to his bank and secured it in a safe deposit box. Have we undervalued the true worth of God? Is he a little like that familiar blanket on that episode of Antiques Roadshow, sort of left in the corner, comforting but not really valued? And in those moments, we end up living a life with fear and anxiety. We can't do anything out of the ordinary because we've lost sight of the true, remarkable power and worth of God. A.W. Tozer rightly said, when we have a low view of God, it's the cause of 100 lesser evils. When we have a high view of God, it is the solution to 10,000 temporal problems. Yes, there'll be always moments of fatigue and defeat and doubt and distraction. There'll be times when you don't feel like worshiping. They're the times we should worship most. But whether it's to get a songbook, to put a CD on, to turn the dial to Joy FM, find moments to worship. Because in those moments there are victories, many victories, where the one who is rightly on the throne is acknowledged as the King of Kings again. And I want to invite you for a few moments before we close with our final song to be in a spirit of worship. Maybe in the pew, or maybe to come forward and worship as we play a little bit of a relatively new song based on these words from Revelation 3 and 4. Let's be in a spirit of worship, either in the pew or come forward as we spend a few moments acknowledging the King of Kings.